You're watching Capitol Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. Joining us now is one of the lead sponsors of the Safety Act, as well as the trailer bill to the Safety Act, Senator Robert Peters. Thank you so much for joining us.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, Cole.
So right now we're talking just after the trailer bill has passed through the Senate. It is on to the House now. And I guess this has been months in the making. We heard about it all summer. We heard about it through the campaign trail. For you now to have this through the Senate, at least, how does this feel?
Feels great. This was a long process. If you include the fact that the build up to the original part of the bill, so 5 years in that making, and then the last 2 years. And so for us to be this close to having this being done and having this passed and then being implemented on January 1st, this feels fantastic. We just want to bring it home now.
The changes that are made in this amendment obviously address a lot of the concerns that were brought up throughout the summer, especially by state's attorneys and by law enforcement. And it doesn't fully, go as far as Senator Scott Bennett's bill did, for instance, but it was a compromise. It met in the middle. Is that what you call this amendment? Is this a compromise? Is that the proper word?
I think it's a product of negotiations. It maintains the original intent of the bill. But includes the feedback from stakeholders like the state's attorneys, like the sheriffs, as well as actually the End Money Bond Coalition too, because they had a trailer bill that they introduced a little bit ago, 5537, that played a role in this as well. So I think this is the fact that when you bring all these different stakeholders together and you have an intentional process, intentional conversations, you lead to having this bill that end up passing in the Senate. So.
Talked about the intention of the bill. The spirit of the bill was the phrase that kept getting tossed around. And there were different interpretations of what that was throughout this entire process. You asked Senator Bennett, you asked the state's attorneys. It's all about getting cash out of the system. The law still does that with its amendment. But when you talk to the people who want to get rid of bail, the bail reform advocates, that they were really talking about how this was about reducing incarceration in the state and how that was the intent of this legislation. All of those groups now are just neutral. The ones that were opposed to the original Safety Act are now neutral. Groups that supported the Safety Act are now neutral. Is that the ideal situation for you? Do you feel like sides gave ground on this whole debate?
Yeah, I think this is an absolutely historic bill. When you think about it, if you can have the FOP and the ACLU both neutral on the same bill, that you have victims' rights advocates supporting this bill, I think this is an amazing accomplishment for the state of Illinois, and I think that if you're a resident and a working class citizen of the state of Illinois, you should be proud. It's something to actually brag about. We're going to have one of the best pretrial systems. We have to make sure it continues to be implemented right, but where we are at, this is something that we should have pride of. And to be honest with you, I think would I have liked to have this under different circumstances and not, with the face of the pressures that we had in November, right, around the election. But there's nothing I can do about what happened in the past. I can only talk about what we're doing right now. And what we did right now is had unanimous support in the Senate Democratic Caucus. And hopefully we can be able to get this done, get this signed. And on January 1st, we're moving to a new day in our pretrial justice system.
One of the biggest changes in this amendment is the expansion of the detention net. More forcible felonies are included under that now. I wonder, now that ground has been given up and there are more felonies introduced to that, is there the possibility that more can be introduced? Does this change? Is the possibility there down the road that this could expand even further as more trailer bills are inevitably introduced to something like this?
Well, I think just in terms of the criminal code, things can expand and retract and shrink, and either or depending on what happens in legislation that's filed. And so when I think about that, almost anything's possible in terms of both ends of that side. So, yeah, but that's conversations. I don't know if that's necessarily, I would say, is specifically like a trailer bill to this, but more about like how I talk about how the criminal code of 1963, every bill that we ever pass is a trailer bill. It's similar to that. This is just a long legacy and history that happens here in the legislative process in Springfield.
Wednesday morning, I talked to you at the Old State Capitol, and you had said that it was inevitable that the detention net was expanded and more were in there. Leading up to this veto session, it did not seem inevitable. It did not seem like that was something you wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Was it inevitable, or was this a concession from the more progressive side of the Democratic caucus?
No, in terms of that was something that was definitely, basically talked about for about 16, 18 months by a lot of folks. The difference is, I think it's important to know, is like, you don't want to just give everything out there in the context of a highly politically charged environment. So, when we think about this, there was a lot of things and different factors going on politically in terms of the environment. And so I think that what we have now is a good compromise. We've been able to make adjustments to the dangerousness standards so that low-level people don't get caught up in the system. To be honest with you, this is something I'm very proud of, and I think that everybody who's worked on this should be proud of. And again, January 1st, let's make history happen.
There's the state's attorneys have been at the State's Attorney Association has been at the table. The law enforcement advocates have been at the table now. They're neutral on this bill, but they've made it clear they plan to continue negotiating on a bill like this, whether it's this spring or 3 springs from now. Are those bridges still going to be intact that you've built in these negotiations? Is there more room to negotiate on some of these matters? Or is it just that you're ready to go for January 1st, and now we'll just see how it goes?
Well, so I want to say this. Everybody is going to continue to fight for what they believe in. They are. That's just who they are. State's attorneys, sheriffs, the advocates, the directly impacted, the victim rights advocates. That's something that people are going to do no matter what. And that's for almost any piece of legislation. When you pass climate, the CEJA, people are going to still fight for climate change policy. When you pass, I tend to compare this to, Obamacare or the Voting Rights Act and historical civil rights legislation. You still push for more civil rights legislation, right? And so my guess is, everyone's going to fight for the things that they need and they believe in. But in this moment, they fought for this bill.
All right. Well, Senator Robert Peters, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.